All right. Welcome back to the Spearfactor Spearfishing Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Whitman, and today's guest is Julie Higgs. She is from Florida. She's a firefighter. She's a world record holder. She's a legit diver. An incredible. She's a USA women's spearfishing team member as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have Julie here to talk about everything that she wants to talk about, including she shared with me right before we started filming. She might have the only footage of sawfish hunting.
Yeah, we last year we hit Bull Shark Barge, which is one of our shallower wrecks out here in Stewart, and there was big bait balls all over it, and I put my shark shield on thinking I'm going to jump into a big mess of sharks, and the water was nice and clear, and we found several sawfish, and I got footage of one swimming up into the bait ball and using its rostrum to strike fish, and I ended up reporting it to FWC, and they put me in touch with some reporters who told me it's possible that that's the only footage of sawfish hunting in the wild. So
That's pretty incredible. And how long have you been diving for?
Since I was a kid, I was scuba diving at 5 years old in a pool with my dad, and I guess freediving a little bit before that. I shot my first fish when I was 13 years old.
So the thing that I always find interesting about the ocean and what we tend to spend our time doing is that you've been diving all those years, and like this is still a first for you, like seeing something like that. Like the ocean never ceases to amaze me, and I know a lot of us in the same boat. But yeah, you've been diving your whole life. You've probably dove that particular spot. I'm just going to guess. I don't know how many times, but quite often, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like that one day, you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
That's really cool. Were you with a big group of people or just friends or just?
No, just one other person, and we had gone out deep and the current was really bad. So I recommended we come in a little bit shallower just to get out of the current. Since there was two of us, we weren't really, we wanted a buddy dive and we didn't want to anchor the boat with the current. So I was like, well, Bull Shark Barge is one of the shallowest wrecks we have. And it seems like in Stewart, the closer you get to shore, the less current you have. So it's a very public wreck. It's very easy to get to, and normally I don't want to fight the crowd, but we went ahead and went there, and there was bait pods top to bottom just all over the place.
Where exactly is Stewart in Florida?
Stewart is south of Orlando, north of Miami on the East Coast. It's a pretty small town.
Okay. Are you from there originally, or?
I am from there. I currently live in Fort Pierce, but Fort Pierce is just 45 minutes north, so I didn't make it far.
All right, so like I was saying, that I'm kind of interested in people that spearfish and like their stories, even just outside of spearfishing, and how, you know, the type of personalities everybody is and how they get wrapped into it and all this other stuff. So we've talked a little bit about, you just mentioned, you know, growing up where you did, and can you give us a background of like your childhood and you know, maybe your family life or whatever it was that got you into this? Have you always been outdoorsy?
Yes, I have. My dad had a 33-foot sailboat that we used to take over to the Bahamas, and I was 7 years old the first time we went over there, and it would just be me, my dad, and my sister, which everybody thought we were crazy, basically for not having another adult. But we would spend the majority of our summer in the Bahamas every summer. And I think growing up on a boat teaches you a lot. You know, you hit bad weather, you get thrown into all sorts of different situations. My dad was constantly fixing the boat. The boat was struck by lightning a couple times. You know, just things happen and you're forced to deal with them because you're in the middle of nowhere, and it kind of makes a stronger person out of you because of it.
Is your sister older or younger, or?
She's 2 years younger than me.
Okay, so you were the older sibling. Do you have any brothers or Just
No,
you sister?
I also have a stepsister who's even younger, but yep, just the three of us.
Okay. So how was it? Would you say like, and I'm just speaking from my own experience with my daughters, but would you say like you were a daddy's girl or you definitely like spent a lot of time with your dad?
Yeah, I definitely am still a daddy's girl.
I'm just laughing because, do you think that had a big impact on you? Like, obviously, I mean, you talked about spending time with your dad in the Bahamas and all of that, but did that have a big impact on your upbringing and how you looked at life, I guess, or experienced it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my dad was basically my primary parent, and he was a firefighter, and I became a firefighter. So our lives kind of paralleled. He was commercial diver for a little bit when he was younger, and I'm not a commercial diver, but I dive as much as a commercial diver does, it seems like. But we've always had the same interests, the same hobbies, and I feel like when I went to fire school and became a firefighter, I understood my upbringing a little bit more. A lot of things I learned in fire school, like, this is very familiar. But yeah,
That's great. No, that's great. Um, so is your dad still an active firefighter or?
he's been retired for several years now.
Oh, okay. All right. So he must be pretty proud of you. Like, it's probably like he must love looking back and seeing you doing the same thing. And yeah,
Yeah, I'm a firefighter. My sister is a nurse, and my stepsister is also a firefighter. So it's a pretty close-knit medical family.
wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that really goes to show you, I think, like the impact that your dad must have been a pretty amazing dad to leave such a positive impression to put you guys, to make you guys look up and be like, hey, I want to be like that, or I want to do something like that. That's pretty awesome. It's all based in service too. That's even cooler. Very cool. So was your dad a diver? Or how did you get into diving?
Yes, he was a diver. Like I said, he was a commercial when he was younger, and the Bahamas was something he became obsessed with. And we did almost all of our diving in the Bahamas because we were working off of a sailboat in a dinghy, which is very easy to do in the Bahamas. And working out of a dinghy in Florida isn't so common, I guess, to get to deeper spots where the fish are anyway. So we did the majority of our diving in the Bahamas. Wasn't until I got older, I'm like, there's some good diving here too.
Yeah, in Florida, you just got to go like 40 miles out, right, to get some water depth.
Depends on where you are in Florida. So the Gulf Stream parallels and heads north, and I believe it is closest at Jupiter. So in Jupiter, when you head out, it drops off almost immediately, and you have that crystal clean blue water. And the Gulf Stream tends to head east the further north it goes. So the further north on the east coast of Florida, the further you have to go out to get to deeper, cleaner water. And then the west coast is pretty shallow for quite a ways, so you have to go pretty far on the west coast.
Right. Yeah, I've spent some time in Panama City, and yeah, it was like a 50-mile hike to get out to some really deep water. But so with Florida, do you guys have the same issue that we are currently having in California, like with closures? They want to close certain regions, or how are your regulations? Are you guys pretty heavily regulated? I know there's just an absolute ton of divers and fishing. Mm-hmm. And I also hear, just by doing the podcast and through friends, like people kind of bitching about all the shark issue down there and the sharks and the Goliath groupers. But what are some of are you having like conservation issues with environmentalists butting heads with the outdoorsmen and things like that?
They are slowly increasing the sizes of certain fish, which is debatable. Some people argue that needs to happen. Other people argue that fish only get so big in certain areas. And a lot of people don't stay up to date on the regulations. So I get on boats all the time and they shoot a fish and I'm like, that used to be legal, but not anymore. You know, they just keep slowly increasing the sizes. They have certain fish that used to be open all the time now have seasons, like hogfish has a season and a couple other species. But and then the West Coast and the East Coast have completely different regulations. So I have to kind of look up some things when I go over on the West Coast because it's different, and they even have some different rules down in the Keys. So it just depends on, I guess, what they've decided is best for the area.
Yeah.
As far as the sharks, there's definitely a lot of sharks here. Just in my lifetime of diving, I went from almost never seeing a shark to seeing a shark on every single dive. And they've learned what a spear gun sounds like when it goes off, and it used to spook sharks, and now it seems to attract them. I actually wear a shark shield in most of the places that I dive these days just to help. And I think people feeding the sharks has really changed their behavior also. So the sharks definitely have gotten noticeably worse.
No, that's actually, I mean, it's reassuring to hear you, who've been diving your whole life, say you've noticed a difference. I think one of the things that's kind of wild that gets really overlooked from all the conservationist or environmental groups, because I think we're all conservationists, but is the fact that we've been diving for such an extended amount of time, so regularly, that I feel like, just like you just talked about, we know when things have changed. Like, you can see it. Like, you can see it. And it seems like my issue with the environmental groups here is that they're always kind of chasing their tail. Like, I don't know, it's more emotional based than science based, and everybody throws that term science out. But I'm just saying, like, you can stand on a pier or a boat ramp all day long and take measurements and all you want. But I'm telling you, like, it's like when you're in the water, it's like this place is either a ghost town and has been a ghost town, or it's absolutely healthy or completely overpopulated with one fish species. That's a big thing that we see here. And it's good to hear that, like, I mean, it's not good, but it's interesting to hear that you are experiencing the same thing out there. And you're not the first diver that I've talked to that says the same thing. And I really wish that in our community that we could get some sort of governing body to, like, lump all the fishing people or all the divers, even though I think fishermen and divers are very different types of people in some way. Like, just like I think free divers and spearfishermen are kind of different too. Could get together to, like, put some actual, like, science or help work with scientists to, like, get some solid, real data behind everything. Yeah, that's been a hot topic this week here.
Yeah, I think we've definitely overprotected some species, like the Goliath grouper. I think we've overprotected, which they have initiated harvesting some Goliath grouper. They've put a slot out, which I guess is step one. But you know, everywhere there's a Jewfish, they're just eating all of the lobster in the area. Those fish eat a lot of fish, so they're pushing other species out. We'll hit rubble piles and there'll be 50 to 100 Jewfish on it, and they're hungry. I'll shoot a fish. I actually had one grab my hand not too long ago. I was 60 feet deep and I shot a big mutton snapper, and I grabbed the fish, and the Goliath, I want to say Jewfish, the Goliath grouper grabbed my hand. Scared me pretty good. I actually have it on film. But another species I think we've overprotected is the red snapper, the American red snapper, which they are slowly opening them up more and more each year. But I've talked to some commercial guys who believe that the red snapper, when they overpopulate an area, they push the gag grouper out. And I know they're having an issue in the Gulf right now with gag grouper, and they're starting to limit the season on gag grouper over there, and all the commercial guys are like, the gags are being pushed out by the reds. You're overprotecting the red snapper. and they compete for the same food source. And when there's so many red snapper that they're at the surface, you show up to the spot and that's all you can catch, and you got to keep throwing them back. Like, that has an effect also. So
Yeah, that's a super good point too. About how, as divers, we understand the ebbs and flows of things and how certain things flow. And just because, like, the gag grouper, they got pushed out, they went somewhere. So, like, has the population decreased? I don't know, but in this particular area, it has. You know.
mm-hmm.
So, but then you'd have a scientist or a fishing game or whoever goes there and does their measurements and be like, yeah, there's no gag grouper here. We got to, but they don't understand that the one affects the other. I don't understand. I could go on a tangent about this, but I'm also not, but also I am not the most educated person in the world, as far as I know there's people that are living, they make a living doing this, but it's just like, I don't understand how we overlook such simplicities in the way this whole thing works. You don't have to be a scientist to know that, it's a food chain, and so there's only so many holes in a reef, and every hole is filled with this particular fish. The other fish are out of there. But yeah, I think it's a good topic to talk about. I just wish we would get organized, to be able to take and work together and be able to come to a table. But there's so many subgroups, and then everybody's arguing, and I don't know. Last meeting I called into, it sounded like certain people weren't taking it seriously and just being total jackasses. It was so embarrassing. They weren't divers or anything, but just California, like, open Zoom call was just a bad idea. I guess there's not that many people. Yeah. But with you, like, how do you think, let's say you got into diving, but with the firefighting, I got a lot of friends that are firefighters. Do you think that diving is almost meditative, being that your line of your work is, regardless of what's going on with a lot of medical calls and everything like that, you do, I don't know how it is in Florida, but, my childhood friend's a firefighter, and it's like the amount of death that they see is a lot, and it does take a toll on a lot of people I know. But it seems like the spearfishing would just be such a great escape from all of that. I mean, did you find something like that in diving as well?
Yeah, for sure. And I wouldn't say it's that we see so much death. It's just a stressful job in general. We grow to associate tones going off with something bad happening to someone, whether it be, they're injured or they're sick or they're dying or they're dead or whatever it is. It's something bad is happening to someone, and now I have to mitigate that problem. So, most of the time I just look at it as I'm helping that person. That's a good thing. And that's how I do my job. But as far as spearfishing, yeah, for sure. It's definitely, luckily, firefighting, you don't have to think about work when you're not at work. I don't know how people do jobs where they're never really stop working. But when I spearfish, I turn everything. The phone goes off. I'm just there with my friends having a good time. I don't know. Yeah, it definitely helps.
No, I think, what do you think in your childhood that helped you? Because I think both spearfishing, firefighting, there's critical thinking, there's problem solving, there's thinking on your feet. I mean, I can think of so many situations and similarities with diving and problems, like you said, getting attacked or whatever, your hand grabbed by a grouper at 60 feet. Where do you, have you always been able to problem solve and kind of think on your feet? I'm assuming, yeah, always be kind of in the present. Have you always been like that your whole life?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for just having a strong mind. There's a girl that I went to fire school with, and she was so much stronger than me physically. and we would do physical agility tests, and I would always pass and she would always fail. And she's a good friend of mine and I wanted her to succeed, and we talked a lot about it. And she would just look at me and say, "You have a stronger mind than I do." She's like, I get in my head and I make myself fail. She said, "You have a stronger mind. That's why you're passing, and that's why I'm failing." That left a pretty big impression on me. And I think that kind of goes back to me growing up, being on the boat with my dad, being in the heat and the bugs and the bad weather and things breaking and, just having to deal with it and learning from it. And yeah, I definitely think it had a huge effect.
Did you have, and you don't have to answer this or not, but do you have any childhood trauma at all when you were growing up, or things that were just like kind of crappy at all?
I don't have the best relationship with my mom, but I don't really want to get too much into that.
No, you're good. You're good. The only reason why I bring it up is because I, including myself, have spoken, to a lot of people, and there's been time and there's been that fork in the road at a very early age where it was like, oh, I could have went this way and maybe been a victim, or I didn't like that, so I'm going to do this. Instead, I went this way, and I went the other side where I don't need anybody to take care of me. I've got it. Or I know who I can depend on. And it also kind of left, I'm speaking specifically for me, but it left me very black and white as far as I didn't like that. So I'm never going to do that again, number one, or pass that on. And also I realized that I want to be tougher. And it really singled me out to focus in on one parent and look to him. And I say him, my dad, to look to him of what a man should be. And I got to give my dad credit. He was I don't want to get into my dad stuff either, but I got to give my dad credit. He was a tough dad. He was a fair dad, very tough dad. But looking back now that I'm older, I look back and I go, oh, that really made me who I was. It allowed me to accomplish all these things. It allowed me to be independent. It allowed me to do all these other things and think on my feet and all these, because he was the one parent that that mentored me, if you will. And also he was always strong, physically, mentally. And it was set that bar so high. And that's kind of why it was just talking with you very briefly. When you said you spent a lot of time with your dad, it was man, I wish that I could be half the dad, in some ways, and better than my dad was, especially having daughters. It was just my brother and I and my dad, which was a bunch of Neanderthals raising each other, So it's now you have daughters. It's okay, how do you be a good dad to a daughter? I don't know, but I'll just, do what I think is right, And it seems like you being able to be strong and think on your feet. So it's wow, you must have really gravitated towards your dad. And you said you didn't have the greatest relationship. I know how it goes, ebbs and flows and all of that. But it must have definitely left a huge impact on you to go to the life of service, and then also the strong mental mind, because your body will eventually fail. I can go off on the mental toughness thing. Because when I coach the kids too at football, it's dude, everybody's going to be bigger than somebody, or, you guys, you see guys that go to training, because I work with the military guys, and you can say, that guy is built like the most in shape guy ever. And you can tell that guy's soft as friggin' the Charmin I wipe my ass with. And you know why he's soft? Because he's never really, everything's been easy. He's never really had to go to the red line to where it's I physically can't do anything more, or she physically can't do anything more. Well, okay, but you're still not going to break me. I just, but I've seen the people do that, and they're oh, I'm the strongest guy in my class. And then they just, as soon as they get to that point, they don't know how to handle it. And it's incredible to see like what makes someone mentally stronger than others, you know? And that's why I asked about the trauma thing. It's just like, maybe that was it. Cause like for me, it was that. And my brother and I both, I mean, we have our issues, but like for us, it was like that side of it, you know? And it's just curious. I was just curious with you, with your
I
dad.
wouldn't say any one specific traumatic thing, but my mom was an alcoholic. She's actually not an alcoholic now.
Oh, good for her.
Her mom was an alcoholic, and as a kid, I could never understand how my mom could become what her mom was. And I was just, when I would ask people, I was just told, well, some people have a very addictive personality. So I never drank. I've never been drunk. I don't drink. I don't like the taste of alcohol, and I don't see any benefit to it. I know my whole life, everyone's always asked me, how do you not drink? And I'm like, well, I just never allowed myself to start in the first place. And that was just because as a kid, I was told, you know, my family has an addictive personality, and I was too afraid that I would become like them. I think that had a huge impact on my entire life. I think people don't realize how much alcohol can hold them back. I don't have any story that starts with, well, I did this thing, but you know, I was drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you. No, that's awesome. Good for you. I think the best, the thing that did the best for my drinking ever was when I was a bouncer, and I saw people. I had to deal with drunks every night. It was like being designated driver every night of the week. It was so irritating. I remember my girlfriend, my wife now, like we were like, hey, I'm over this shit, you know? But yeah, I definitely cut back to next to nothing. If it doesn't have an added benefit, I will say, I can say I've seen more families completely just destroyed by alcohol, to where, you know, the leadership thing is huge. Like I feel like as a parent, and I know I've probably been talking more and more about this on the podcast, so, but fuck it, I'll just keep going. But it's like, how can I tell my kids not to drink if they see their dad drunk, you know? Like,
Right.
it's a lead by example thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I mean, I was in Mexico one time, dehydrated, and I had a single beer, and I was hammered off a beer, and they all were laughing because it's so uncharacteristic of me, because I just typically don't drink. So if that's their only memory with alcohol, then I'll take that, you know. But I've seen a lot of kids that I've coached, and a lot of even kids just that I know families really struggle with it. And it's insane to me that we look to other issues, and really the one that just affects everybody that I know, you know, is alcohol. A lot of people that I know, it's terrible. But you know, hey, whatever. That's a whole other show. Anyways, let's change gears here a little bit. You're a tough mother effer, which I love that. That's awesome. Hell yeah. And you're a badass diver. So how did you end up on the USA team, or can you walk us through like your experience with that?
So I've done over 20 different tournaments, all different levels. And Nationals in 2021 was held in Stewart. And Scott Turgeon was in charge of it. And he was bugging me, you got to do this tournament, you got to do this tournament. And a lot of people I knew that were doing the tournament, and they had a really nice prize table. So I was like, all right, I'll do the tournament. And I kind of decided to do it last minute. So I wasn't sure if I was going to get the time off of work. And I ended up partnering with this guy named Javier, just because I reached out to Scott. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the tournament, but you know, it's kind of last minute. And he's like, I already have a partner for you. Okay. And I had met Javier before. So we knew each other. We'd actually never dove together. But I guess everybody just knows I'm a good diver. So there was no hesitation to pair up together. And he made the comment, you know, if we're going to do this, I want to take it very seriously. And we both dove very, very hard, and we ended up placing top mixed team, and I got top female diver, and I got 6th overall in that tournament. So I got a lot of attention in that tournament. And the way that you rank to be on the world's team is every year there's nationals, and every other year there's worlds. Your 2 national scores are added together, created a list that ranks you for the world's team. So I did pretty well in the first nationals, and then the next nationals was in Lake Powell, Arizona. And I was like, well, I guess I had a lot of fun. Like I'll go do that too. And there's a lot of people who travel to do nationals, so I knew quite a few people in the tournament. And my partner Javier was like, well, we did really well together. We might as well continue to stay on the same team. And we went, and we ended up getting top mixed team again. I got top female again, which, since I was top female for 2 years in a row, that ranked me number 1 for the women's world team.
That's super cool. Would you say, like, I don't know if you've experienced any of this, but it seems like to me Florida is much more of a competitive diver state. Like, it seems like there's way more involvement in competitions. People are way more into it. I know we here in California, we do it. And it's like everything. It's more of a hangout too. And like you said, the prize table, like what do we got here? Like, okay, let me sign up. Maybe I'll get something, But it seems like really like Florida's just huge with competitive. And maybe they just have more divers, but it just seems that.
If we just look at the states side by side, we're surrounded on 3 sides with water. We can dive all year. Half your coast, I'm assuming, gets pretty cold and not so fun to dive.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. The dive culture just seems completely different in Florida. Yeah. Would you say, like, would you say, you mentioned having a partner and all that and linking up. Was there ever issues with you being a female? Because I've heard this from other people, like trying to find guys to go dive with, and nobody wants their spouse to go dive with another girl or something, or, you know what I mean? Have you ever had that as well? Especially like being younger?
Definitely have. It doesn't seem to be an issue so much now, I guess, because I've been in a relationship and my partner normally comes with me. But yeah, I've had a lot of lifelong guy friends that I've dove forever, and as soon as they get a new girlfriend, they get jealous, or wives get jealous, or honestly, I have so many people that I dive with now that when there's an issue with jealousy, I just dive with someone else. Like,
right. No, right.
It's not, I don't know. It's not worth me causing someone else problems, whether it's warranted or not. So,
yeah. That happened. There was a young lady that wanted me to take her diving, and she happened to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, she was. And my wife was like, let me see. She's like, oh, hell no. Hold on, babe. You're putting your lives in each other's hands. Just, if you were in my position, and my wife doesn't dive, and I'm like, all right, babe, like, fair enough. I just feel bad to like, hey, no, sorry, but I understand. I'm not, but it's just, I always thought about that. It was like my first experience with that. And I don't know if just because she happened to be gorgeous or not, but it was just really funny. So whenever I get some of the ladies on the show, I always ask them, because I know some of them, like out here, like, dude, I can't find someone, or inappropriate stuff or whatever it is. And I was like, well, I never experienced any of that stuff. I never even heard about that stuff. So I was just curious. So what's next for you as far as the USA team? Are you guys... are you on the team with Nicole Burko?
Yes. So we just did nationals in Hawaii last year, and we're doing nationals in the Keys this year. So I feel like until we compete in the Keys, there is not officially a women's team. Nicole and I were on the last team.
Right.
But in my opinion, until nationals takes place in the Keys, and there's a list of women ranked based off their scores the last 2 nationals, and they go down the list and they ask, do you want to be on the team? Because not every person who competes in nationals wants to compete in worlds. And they get 3 answers, 4 with the alternate, then that's your next team. People are treating me like I'm already on the next worlds team, and I did compete in Hawaii and I did well, and I am going to compete the next nationals, and competing in 2 nationals instead of 1 obviously gives you a better score. So I have a good chance of ranking for the world's team, but maybe they pick a part of the world that I don't want to compete in and I decline the offer and I'm not on the team. But, everybody has their strengths and competitions, and some of these competitions people are expected to dive like 200 feet deep to shoot a fish, and maybe I sit that tournament out. So
yeah, I heard about that too. I'm like, well, that's off the table. Like, yeah, heard some crazy stories. People diving and blacking out. Yeah,
there's a lot of pressure on me to do these tournaments because there's not that many women who take this serious and want to be on the team, and I don't want to dive that deep. So I don't know.
What depth are you comfortable diving to? Because Florida, I know Florida guys all encompassing, but Florida people are just divers, can dive pretty deep because you have to a lot of times.
I can get down to 60 all day, every day, all day long. On a good day, I can get down to 80, 85. I am planning on taking some classes this year to get a little bit deeper. But I don't push the depth that hard, but partially because I know the deeper I go, the bigger the fish, and the more likely I am to make a bad decision. But I definitely want to take some classes this year. I work on my depth because most of the people I dive with do dive deeper than me, and having a little bit of depth will help me compete. But yeah, I'd say on a good day, 80 feet.
So would you, have you ever taken a class before?
I haven't. And I need to, because now that I'm considered a role model in the sport, everybody asks me, I'm a new diver, what should I do? And I tell them to take a class, and then I feel bad that I have not taken one. But that is the plan, is to take level 1 and level 2 this year. They're a little pricey, and they're always on the weekend, and I always have invites to go diving on the weekends, and I just haven't gotten myself to do it yet.
It took me 20 years to take a dive class because I always thought if it ain't broke, why fix it, and just that exact same thing. It was expensive, and it's like, I dive on the weekends. Like, I don't want to train, I want to dive. So
I acknowledge the fact that there's a good possibility that I have perfected some bad habits. And, there's no reason for me not to take a class. So I've decided I'm taking classes this year.
I think you'll really, I think you'll like it because exactly what you said. Like, I realize I've had a lot of bad scuba diving habits that I didn't know because I just was diving at work. And then when I was a kid, I got certified at like 12, and it's like, oh, you're not supposed to bend your knees like that. Or, oh, it's like, oh, this could have been way easier. I could have been enjoying this just a little bit more, for a lot longer time. And the next thing you know, you're holding your breath a little longer and 10 more feet deeper. So yeah, it's better to know too much, I guess, than,
Right. Well, when the classes got popular, I talked to people who took the classes, and I was like, what changed diving for you with this class? And they all kind of said, oh, take the snorkel out of your mouth when you go down. And so, I listened to these people, and I made some adjustments and did see a difference. But I still should take the class.
I would say I took the classes and from a friend that gave me a pretty good deal, when I was in Guam, and he's like, how do you know all this stuff? I was like, because I just read about it online. But there was like, it's a difference between reading something and then having a trainer there to like film you and say, hey, look at the way you're kicking and try your duck dive this way and all this stuff like that. And there was like 2% of the stuff that was game changing, just by tweaking it a little bit. But, yeah. Where, go ahead.
When the classes got really popular, I went from diving all the time to all of a sudden people would find out that I didn't have a class and they were hesitant to invite me. And I was like, I don't understand. They're like, well, you don't have the class. I'm like, but I've been diving my whole life. And they're like, but what if something bad happens and someone blacks out, like, and you won't know what to do? And I'm like, well, I've been a paramedic for 11 years. But your 2-day class will probably, resolve the emergency, I guess. I understand the hesitation, but it kind of cracked me up that out of nowhere, it seemed like I got hit with that multiple times. And then eventually everybody got to know me and was fine with me coming out. But
yeah, that's a little absurd. Yeah. So I know you, how many world records do you have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 8. I wrote them down because everyone asks me and I can't remember them.
Yeah. I was hesitant to talk about it because I'm sure you've covered it so many times. But I think it's just important to note it is that 8, like, that's a lot of world records. I saw some of them. I think you were in Costa Rica or Central America.
None of my records came out of Costa, but I have been in Costa a lot lately.
Okay. What was that big you shot? Your yellowfin?
Yeah, I shot 2 big yellowfin, and I did not weigh them, but the locals estimated the bigger one to be between 180 to 220 pounds.
Wow, and that was in Costa Rica?
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, we got it pretty early, and I was given the option to end the day and go in and weigh it or fillet it so that we could put it on ice and continue fishing and diving. So I was like, I don't care how much it weighs. And now I'm home and everyone's like, how much did it weigh? I'm like, we didn't weigh it.
I think that's super cool. I saw that online on your post, and I was like, that's pretty cool though. Like, when did you start traveling, like, for diving, like, exclusively? Have you done that most of your life, or?
So I kind of keep the Bahamas separate because that was a family thing. I'm trying to think. I think I started traveling for surf first. And I'm not a good surfer. I just enjoy surfing. I think my first spearfishing trip, I went to California, and I had a friend out there, and we did a charter. And we just got some you're in California. We just got some calico bass and some sheep's head, and we got some lobsters, and nothing crazy, but it was fun. I think it took me a while to start traveling for spearfishing because it's a little more expensive. The additional cost of baggage and charters, and surfing was just so much cheaper.
Where were you traveling for surfing?
Indonesia, Costa Rica, Panama, Hawaii. I've been to a lot of places.
That's pretty awesome though. Did you always like have a crew to go with, or was it just solo, or?
I do a lot of traveling with my sister. I've done some trips by myself. Sometimes I go to meet someone who lives there. I've gone to California a couple times since then, and road tripped from California into Mexico and done some Mexico trips. Those were pretty good diving trips.
Yeah, where in Mexico? Just
Northern Bahamas? I don't even know.
Okay, perfect.
I just like full trusted these guys and got in a car and let them take me to some mysterious place with giant whale bones on the beach, and we were shore diving and shooting big fish, and then the local was taking us out. I ended up going with them a second time, and they actually trailered a boat down there, which was pretty cool. And yeah, that's
Very
a lot
cool.
better timing in California.
It's incredible. It really is. And it's so close, you know, we're so spoiled here. Yeah. No, that's great. Surfing was my first love too. And then when the waves get small here, it's like you gotta, you know, I guess, yeah, I started surfing when I was a little kid, and then diving, you know, when I was 10 or whatever, on and on.
I started surfing when I was like 21. So although I am far better now than I was then, I'm not as good as I would be had I started when I was a kid, which is frustrating. But I really enjoy it, and traveling to surf is so nice. You get in such good shape, you feel good, the waves are nice. And, I don't know, surf trips are, I almost prefer them over spearfishing trips.
I agree. It really makes packing so easy.
Yeah.
A board, a wetsuit, some shorts, go.
The place I like to go in Costa has good waves and good spearfishing. And I normally take people who don't have their own gear, so I'm just packing this ungodly amount of stuff. I mean,
How many trips have you done to Costa Rica?
I think 5 or 6.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you love it down there? Is that like you really like that spot?
Yeah, I love it because it has waves and fish. Whereas a lot of the other places I go to, I feel like I'm picking one or the other.
Right.
But yeah, that's one of the main reasons I keep going back there. It's just an easy trip. It's a nice short flight.
It's close. It's close. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I went to Nicaragua one time. We did the same thing, surf and dive.
Nicaragua is tricky. I've been to Nicaragua, but from what I've heard, it's illegal to spearfish there. But I also hear about people spearfishing there, so I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta have to peep. Yeah. We went there. It was a surf trip, and we were out there surfing, and I'm like looking, and the water's like pretty clear, you know. And one of the local guys gave me a pole spear, and just there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of fish. And then there was like tuna, you know, right off like a mile out, maybe just 25-pound tuna.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And you know, I think the thing with Central America, the tough spot is like with all the rivers and the weather, like you can get some murky conditions. So you definitely gotta like, it's kind of hit or miss and get away from outlets and things like that. But man, there's some amazing fish down there. Big pardo.
And it is murky, but there are not a lot of sharks down there, so I don't really mind diving in the dirty water down there. It would be a whole different story than diving in that dirty water up here.
Yeah, we were surfing, and the guy's like, "Oh, I saw a tiger shark here last week," and I was like, "It's murky." And you just told me you saw a tiger shark here last. I mean, granted, whatever, but it's just like, heebie-jeebies. I was in Nicaragua, but so what's kind of next for you this year? Like, what are you looking to do, spearfishing wise, or just travel wise, surf wise, whatever?
So right now we're planning a trip to the Bahamas in May. Have a lot of other trips that I would like to do that are not planned. They're just on standby. I'm either waiting for a report, or I'd like to do the bluefin tuna thing in California, but apparently that's not guaranteed every year, so I'm kind of waiting for a report on. Oh, maybe you can give me a report.
You want my honest opinion? I was just at the fuel dock the other day, and apparently they're not. I mean, they saw some in U.S. waters. So we're in San Diego, so we're right there, you know. So really, when they cross that line, that's when so they're in Mexico still. They're about 60 miles away, 60.
Mm-hmm.
So last year was kind of tough because the big boys, they came through. They were here for like 2 weeks, and then they just scooted all the way up north.
Mm-hmm.
North meaning like Orange County, like the Channel Islands, and they were just hanging up there. And then they do like a loop. They go through, then they go out and they sit around Cortez Banks, but that's like 100 miles out.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is that that's great. We know where you're at, but the weather out there, it can be hit or miss. And it's 100 miles. And you go out there and then you're playing whack-a-mole, but you got to really, so there is, sometimes they'll come and they'll just sit here and you'll have weeks or the whole summer, and sometimes the big boys will come and they'll go to San Clemente Island around there, 60 miles. They'll hang around there. They go to Desperation Reef. They'll go out to the Cortez Banks, but they'll all be 40 miles-ish around. That's doable. But last year, they kind of like hopped through all the way through here, and then they went all the way up north of San Clemente Island, which is like a 100-mile run. And that's expensive. And also, it's like a 2-day trip. I mean, yeah, I would say if you're going to come out here to go bluefin, go for bluefin, the best way to, like, I don't want to say guarantee, but to hit it is to go on, I know them well. He sponsors me, but like Lineage Charters, the reason why I say Lineage Charters is a multi-day trip. It's like a 2 or a 3-day trip. That guarantees you, like, you're not killing yourself to get out there 100 miles, and then you're able to fish. You go spend the night at the island. Probably you can dive the island and then go back out and try to get bluefin again, because you can't. I mean, on a full day trip, you really have to decide, like, you're not going to be patty hopping for yellowtail or any of this stuff. If you're going for bluefin, you're going, 60 to 80 to 100 miles, like we're going, and then we're going after them. So I think if you're going to do that, definitely do like a multi-day trip. I run charters for Just Get Wet, and they got a nice boat. It's pretty good. So if the fish are close, just take a day. But it's tough if you're coming out here and you're not sure. It's definitely one of those things like, hey, they're getting close. You can follow them. The migration, hey, they're getting close. Hey, guys are getting them at the 302 or whatever. Okay, hey, and then they're here for like 2 weeks. We might get some weather, and the next thing you know, they pop up like 100 miles north. So yeah, they're 60 miles out right now is what I've been told, and they've seen it. So usually that's a little early. So May, June, and then there's always like 1 week, and I've said this before, there's always the same with white sea bass. There's always like 1 week in June or July, where they end up, I don't know what they turn into the dumbest fish in the world. If you want to go shoot a 200-pound bluefin, there's a week there where they're just like logging around. And you'll see it, guys will just be getting those pictures, big tails. Like, if it's happening right now, you got to go. There's always like a week out of the year, and it's usually when I'm out of town. But like literally, it's like always a week for bluefin. And then when this white sea bass are in, it's like all systems go. Same with bluefin. But yeah, you could do it. It just depends on, they're here for months. It just really depends on weather. Because if they do move out, it's no problem going out and getting them. The problem is the weather. And then you might want multiple days, because one day they may not cooperate, and then the next day they will. Usually earlier on, I'd say, I remember the last couple of years, and I know I'm talking a lot about it, but I kind of geek out over this stuff. But the last couple of years, the guys that have been getting the big ones earlier on are all trolling, including like myself, fishing. Because they were all deep and they weren't on the surface. So if you could meter them at like 100 feet, sometimes if you can get them and kind of meter them and track them, and then you get on the water, you dive down to 50 and they'll come up to you. But earlier on, they're usually a little deeper. And then you get a window where it's good. And then they get run over during 4th of July weekend by every Yahoo in a boat. And then they get skittish again. So yeah, they'll be here. It's just kind of wait for them to get in U.S. waters, like really full on biomass here, and then drop everything, spend a lot of money, and go get them. It's like the world's most expensive fish after you add up all the gas money.
Yeah, like it's on the list. If it doesn't happen this year, I just want it to happen eventually. I've shot a lot of tuna this year already. Not that that means anything. But it's not a planned trip. It's on the list. I have some friends that live in San Diego who might be able to either give me intel or possibly take me out. So I'm kind of touch base with them every once in a while.
How about, did you get any of those big wahoo down there, like in February, March? Have you gotten any of those this year?
Yeah, we've gotten a few wahoo, mostly in the Keys. I'm actually going back to the Keys this weekend. Weather's not looking so good, so maybe I shouldn't talk yet. But I accepted an invite to the Keys this weekend.
Okay.
So it's a little bit later in the season, but they're still hanging around.
Yeah, because I just see posts of like just massive, wahoo. And I've heard like February there's a wahoo run down in Florida, but Florida's a big state, so not really sure. I guess you were saying the Keys, but yeah.
It's weird. People seem to get them the most consistently, but I know people get them at random up and down the coast. So
Very cool, very cool. Any surf trips coming up?
I think I'm gonna be back in Costa in December. Everybody's seeing my tuna pictures, and they all want to go to Costa with me. So I'm gonna take some friends down in December, and that'll be a surf trip again. If I go to California for bluefin, I'd like to surf there. I've done a lot of surfing in California. My sister and I are due for another surf trip. She and I normally take at least 1 or 2 a year. We might try to do something easy like Puerto Rico or something. But like I said, a lot of talked about trips, but the only one that's officially planned right now is May. We're going to the Bahamas.
Nice. So, talk to me. I guess kind of skipped over it, but I think it's notable. It's worthy of discussing the 200-pound, whatever, 180-pound non-weighed giant yellowfin. What was that like? How do you? You're in Costa Rica, I'm assuming. Were you guys just jumping in on debris or bait balls or?
The spinner dolphin.
Okay.
So we're in the Pacific, and you find the spinner dolphin, and we had found this pod that had hundreds and hundreds, and they had babies, and they were moving nice and slow, and they had a ton of tuna following them. So you get ahead of where the dolphin are going, you get dropped in the water, and normally you take one deep breath and you go down right away, but luckily this school of dolphin was so massive, you could actually get half decent breathe up before you went down. And my first dive, I was diving by myself because my boyfriend had an ear infection. I dove down and I was kind of aiming at some smaller ones, and we had shot quite a few smaller ones at that point. And I was on my way up, and I saw the big ones come through at the end of the tuna school. So I got back in the boat, we did a reset, and this time I let half of the tuna school pass before I made my dive. And sure enough, those big tuna came through just like they did the drop before. And I got a really solid shot right behind the gill plate, really close. And I had I had not set this gun up for breakaway like I had set my other guns up. So my gun got ripped out of my hand and the float went off, and I had wrapped my line, and it actually pulled some line out of the reel, which kept the float above the water. And after I got the fish in the boat, I saw that my Dyneema had actually cut through parts of my reel, damaging it in a way that somehow didn't break my line. And my reel is still functional. But pretty lucky to have landed that fish. I have the whole thing on film. It was so big I couldn't even pull it up. I just got it as high as I could with the floats and had the locals hoisted into the boat. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy experience. The local that took me out, he's been going out for years. He said it's the biggest tuna he's ever had on his boat. They primarily hook and line fish, but they take a lot of divers out too. So that was a pretty big deal. It was pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty badass too. When you grabbed that gun, what was wrong with the other guns? You just didn't have it set up.
This gun had a little bit more power to it. And when I saw how big those tuna were, I just wanted a little bit more power. So I grabbed that gun instead and just kind of clipped my float line off to it.
Yeah. I think we've all been there. Just throw me the gun. And you're like, whoops, that was a mistake.
Yeah. I posted that video on all my different social medias, and everyone's like, why didn't you set that gun up as breakaway? I'm like,
oh, I've seen that video where the gun just takes off. And I actually thought the same thing. I go, why would you shoot the break?
well, all my other guns were set up as breakaway, but it switched to that gun last minute.
I was thinking, well, that's a different way to do it. Okay. Like, I guess that's how they do it down there. What gun are you sponsored by Hammerhead? Is that who you're sponsored by? Or? Okay.
I am.
Yeah. And what products do they have? I mean, you could talk a little bit about that. How do you end up getting sponsored by them?
Hammerhead's a great sponsor. They have really durable gear. I was in a relationship with Richie Zacher for 4 years, and he was sponsored by Hammerhead. And Kevin would send a package to him with goodies in it for me, and eventually I needed certain gear, and I reached out to Kevin, and he agreed to sponsor me. But yeah, everything I've used from them is great. They have some of the best gloves in spearfishing. They're double stitched and cut proof and last a long time. And I'm using some of their guns, and all of their wetsuits have been great. And they even have band making material, and I'm very happy to be with Hammerhead. And Kevin's a great guy. Actually, I competed with him in Hawaii. He was my partner. And I'm going to compete with him in Freshwater Nationals later this year. So it's cool to be friends with the person who's sponsoring you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty happy with them.
Yeah, I know that feeling. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It makes for a good, mutual beneficial relationship for sure, especially when giving feedback and things like that. What other sponsors do you have? Because I saw, is that Life? Is that another one, or?
Salt Life, I just signed a contract with them in January, and they've been great. They've set me up with multiple podcasts. They wrote a really beautiful article on me. I feel like they captured every single word that I told them, and maybe even did some research, because it was a very thorough article. I was very impressed. They've posted a bunch of pictures, and in a very short amount of time, it seems like they've made a pretty big effort to promote me, which is nice to have in a sponsor. And they have, go ahead.
Are they a Florida company too? Salt Life, I'm assuming.
That's a good question. I think they are primarily out of Florida, but
yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. No, I was just curious. Because out here, it's funny, it's Salty Crew out here, and then it seems like the East Coast is Salt Life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just, I thank you for coming on the show. And before I end or anything like that, I know I kind of just brought that up randomly, but is there anything you wanted to share, anything else? The yellowfin is, damn, man, you're going to increase tourism in Costa Rica just off that one video, you know?
Yeah, when I shot that fish, everybody was like, that's a fish of a lifetime. And I'm sure it is. And then I went back to Costa Rica and I shot another one that was probably about 130 pounds, which
yeah, it's triple digits.
Really nice fish. But, as great as that sounds, we went out 4 days, and I took my family, my sister, my dad, and my boyfriend, and out of the 4 days, I got one tuna, and that was the only tuna for the entire trip. So it's all chance. I don't know how. I guess I got lucky twice. But I got two fish in a lifetime.
That's pretty awesome. You got as we say at work, you got a horseshoe up your ass. That's what I always say at work. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Very cool. Yeah. So, Julie, where do people like link up with you if they want to get like a hold of you for anything or ask questions or follow you or whatever?
Yeah, I guess most active on Instagram. I have all of the social medias. I got Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I post different things on each one. But as far as responding to people, I do have a link tree on my Instagram with my email in it. I get a lot of notifications that I ignore, so don't take anything personally. But if you send me an email, that's probably your best shot.
All right. Very cool. So I, again, I appreciate you meeting me at 9 o'clock at night, your time, and chatting. And you seemed, I would say you were the most ambitious, like, and accommodating, one of the most accommodating person I've dealt with, which was awesome. And I know you're busy and I know you like to dive. So I do appreciate that because I'm like always trying to squeeze an hour or two in there too, to chat with someone. So I thank you again for that. And I'm looking forward to when are you competing again? When was nationals? You said Key West. Was that nationals?
Yes. In June or July. See, I can always get it mixed up. It's either in June or July.
Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see how you do down there, and good luck to you. I hope you do great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you again for chatting with me and sharing your story, a little bit of your story. I think I could have talked to you for another 2 hours. I know it's getting late, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.